Now that I've officially seen the 2023 future classic film Barbie, I can now confirm with my own two eyes that it was, in fact, pretty incredible. Like, I understand the backlash of people calling it mid, and also mid doesn't mean bad. I don't know why we've colloquialized that word into meaning bad. Mid just means in the middle, and mid is a fine thing for a film to be as long as it also has something to say. The only films that are actually mid in a bad way are the ones that are like mediocre and boring. But then I wouldn't call that mid, I'd just call that boring. The point is, Barbie as a film was great. It delivered exactly the message that I thought it was going to, in a more interesting way than I thought it was going to. Almost every character was interesting and in some way fleshed out, even for a doll film where they're supposed to have only 1 or 2 traits per character by design. And overall, I just thought it was great. It's not a shock to anybody that the aggressively feminist YouTuber likes the work of Greta Gerwig and films about how hard it is to be a woman. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I want to talk about the fact that Barbie is asexual. Yes, this is the exact outfit that I wore to the Barbie movie. Can you tell? Do you like it? Do you like the rich earrings? Mild spoilers for the Barbie movie ahead, so if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Oh my god! Get your best pink clothes on right now and march to that cinema! Now, I am not the first person to make this observation. There is a long and storied history of people referring to Barbie this way in ace circles, but particularly in this film specifically, Barbie is asexual. It's not up for debate. For a start, they make absolutely no effort to make her and Ken's relationship romantic on her side at all. She sees him in, like, the most platonic way you can see another person.
I thought I might stay over tonight.
Why?
While he pines after her to the point where he ends up starting the patriarchy because he wants her to notice him. And isn't that just how the world works in a nutshell? Patriarchy is just men trying so hard to win the affection of women like prizes for being on top that they fall over themselves, making the world worse in the process. Because being a winner is more important than being a decent human being. I'm not saying all men. I'm saying that's patriarchy. But more importantly than her feelings, or lack thereof, for Ken, she's never shown interest in him or anybody else. Even when looking at women, she only ever looks at them through a lens of admiration, not through a lens of sexuality. Which could also just be discussing the way that women make films as opposed to men, for a start. Like, the first time we're shown Barbie breathing in, it's over her chest, because we have to see her chest rise. And I just know for a fact that if a man had made this movie, that would have been a full tit shot. So, you know, there are differences in the ways that women are sexualized in women-led films as opposed to male-led films. The male gaze is a very particular kind of stylistic and aesthetic choice, informed by patriarchy, obviously, being made by male directors all the time, and it has reared its head in things directed by women too, because when the male gaze has been the main lens through which media has been projected to the world for decades, it starts to become part of the language of film. And even women can fall into the trap of over-sexualizing female characters and giving men all the depth. And I'm not saying that every man uses the male gaze in his movies, but it is easier to not male gaze in a female-directed movie. But also, in a more literal sense, she's asexual because she doesn't have sex organs! She literally has a line in this movie where she says, I don't have a vagina. They don't need to reproduce because they're dolls, and they are created, not born. They don't need genitals. It makes total sense. And in the film, it's mainly used as a throwaway line for comic effect, and it is funny. But also, you cannot get more asexual than literally not having the organs for sex. She's physically and psychologically as ace as they come in this movie, and I think that's fantastic. Oh, she's also aromantic, by the way. And yes, the last scene in this movie, mild spoilers, references her now probably having a vagina, but that doesn't make her not ace anymore. Just because she now has the organs required to do the sex doesn't mean she has the desire or has to participate. Maybe she will and maybe she won't. But the version of her that exists in this movie is ace. That's not even really up for debate. Margot Robbie herself said so. She doesn't have reproductive organs. If she doesn't have reproductive organs, would she even feel sexual desire? No, I don't think she could. Which makes the weird, gross backlash from adult men about this movie so much worse. Because aside from the fact that grown men are crying about the idea that a popular movie exists that hasn't been made for them or with them in mind at all, every other movie is about you, grow up and sit down. They've also gone out of their way to complain about how she's not sexy enough. You know, this doll for kids. Who is also played by Margot Robbie, a woman so stereotypically hot that they make jokes about it in the movie. One tweet, which was clowned on by everybody immediately so hard that he deleted his account, states, "This is the real Barbie look men want, not the desexualized one they put in the movies, in case you were wondering," attached to a video of a hot lady walking down the street. Now I will say, the lady is hot. Whether or not her hotness is for men is debatable, but she's hot. But that's not what Barbie is about. As Matt Bernstein pointed out, Barbie is made for young girls. We don't care what Barbie look men want. She's not for you. She doesn't exist just for men to sexualize her. She's a kid's toy. And yes, the original doll she was based on was a call girl called Lily, but that's not what she was for. Ruth designed her off Lily's design, but Barbie was never a call girl. Even if she was, that's not a bad thing, by the way. Sex workers deserve rights and basic respect, but Barbie was a kid's toy. She was an astronaut and a doctor and the president. From the moment she became Barbie, it wasn't about selling sex appeal to men, it was about selling the fantasy of autonomy to little girls. And we can argue about the ethics of that until the cows come home, but it doesn't change the facts. Also, most of the people saying stuff like this are conservative men. And are y'all the bitches who are trying to tell us that drag queen story times are tantamount to grooming? Can you explain to me why drag queens near children are bad, but you want an overly sexualized look in a film about the kid's toy? And speaking of overly sexualized characters in kids' films...
You had plenty money, 1922.
Look, Jessica Rabbit was a sexual awakening for a lot of people, myself included. I identified as bi long before I realized I was also ace, and part of discovering I was bi was watching Jessica Rabbit sing seductively to me over and over again because I just liked the song.
Why don't you do right?
Yeah, you weren't fooling anybody with that, Queen. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of my favorite movies, and I even dressed up as Jessica Rabbit at a high school Halloween party.
You had plenty money, 19...
I've always had a bit of a thing for her. Most people have. But she doesn't have a thing for anybody. A big part of her appearance in this movie is how everybody believes she must be sleeping around. She must be having affairs because they don't understand why she'd stay faithful to Roger. Eddie, our main character, cannot believe a dame like her would be with a cartoon like Roger, but she loves him for him. She says it herself. She likes his sense of humor.
What do you see in that guy?
He makes me laugh.
She tells Eddie,
"You've got me all wrong. You don't know how hard it is being a woman looking the way I do."
And the response she gets is,
You don't know how hard it is being a man, looking at a woman looking the way you do.
It's then that she says the famous line,
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Jessica might look sexual, might have every man in a 100-mile radius projecting his fantasies onto her, might even use her looks for work, but that doesn't make her inherently a sexual entity. She can capitalize on what people think of her without needing to let that define her. Her job involves her playing up her looks and other people's perceptions of her to make a living, and she does it very well. But that doesn't mean that it has to go any further than that. She's selling a fantasy of sensuality, but that doesn't have anything to do with her personal life beyond the stage. Oh, and that reminds me of...
I couldn't aspire to anything higher.
Yeah, we're graduating to real people now. Although, judging by how some of y'all treat Marilyn Monroe, maybe you won't see that much of a difference. Marilyn is a sex symbol. We all know this. Anybody who's seen my first video on The Idol knows my feelings about the film Blonde and about my personal connection to Marilyn through all the research I did for my dissertation, and in particular how offensive it was to me that the film wildly over-sexualized her seemingly for the sake of it, despite her not wanting to be reduced to only that. And I didn't mention this in the video because it wasn't that relevant to my points at the time, but it's strongly suspected that Marilyn was ace. Largely because she wrote in her own autobiography that she didn't care about sex.
Why I was a siren, I hadn't the faintest idea. There were no thoughts of sex in my head. I didn't want to be kissed, and I didn't dream of being seduced by a duke or a movie star. The truth was that with all my lipstick and mascara and precarious curves, I was unsensual as a fossil. But I seemed to affect people quite otherwise.
And
I used to wake up in the morning when I was married and wonder if the whole world was crazy, whooping about sex all the time. It was like hearing all the time that stove polish was the greatest invention on earth.
that was more of an Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors impression than it was a Marilyn one, but you see what I mean.
Cheap and tasteless outfits, not nice ones like this.
Now, Marilyn is documented to have slept with men and women over the course of her life, secret queer icon that she was. But even one of the women she had a romantic affair with for 7 years is on record saying that Marilyn hated sex. Quote, "She was afraid of giving up all that had made her Marilyn, the sexiest girl, dresses, makeup, moves, because she thought she had nothing to give except sex appeal." In fact, it's interesting because she really hated sex. Yes, Marilyn, she hates sex. It's often theorized that she might have been a lesbian, and she was definitely queer, but even if she was a lesbian, she was an ace one. Even on occasions when Monroe professed to enjoy it or be having it more frequently, that doesn't preclude her from being asexual. Asexual people can have sex, and some of them do. I won't, but I'm sure other aces are out there doing it, and good for them. For a lot of ace people, sex isn't something they're repulsed by, it's just something they don't care about. So participating in it is kind of like going rock climbing with your partner when you're not really that into the outdoors, but you love your partner and you want to make them happy. It's possible that you could even have fun while you're out rock climbing with them, but that doesn't mean that you'd be doing it if they weren't so passionate about the subject, you know? Obviously, I don't want to posthumously apply a label to somebody, especially considering that my whole dissertation is about not speaking over people who've had the narrative of their lives taken away from them and twisted, but Marilyn has multiple quotes implying she might have identified as ace if she knew of the label, and there are people from throughout her life who attested to her disinterest in it. But people find it hard to acknowledge that because she's such a famous sex symbol. She made her career off the back of nude photography and playing desirable women on screen, and she knew that her looks and her sex appeal was essential to her success. She's the woman. Jessica Rabbit might be based on a different early sex symbol, but the story she's telling, the character she's portraying, it might as well be Marilyn.
No, 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 no.
But this is part of the problem with A, existing as a woman, and B, existing as an asexual. Not only do we as women have to put up with being sexualized against our will every time we go outside, but asexual women have it even worse because somebody else's opinion of our outward appearance affects how tolerant they are of our identity. In order to be ace, we must also be modest, dress frumpy, be shy, and not engage in sexual behavior or conversation, or our aceness is invalidated. In other words, cosplay as a Mormon in order to exist as an ace person. I want to talk about the way that women are sexualized and how being sexualized and being seen as a sexual being does not mean that you are one. I think we all know that the image you project isn't actually you, but we keep forgetting that in the age of the internet, and I already talked about what happened to Yasmin Benoit on TikTok, but I'm going to bring it up again because I think it supports my point really well. Over-sexualizing people because they're sexy to you personally does not make them not asexual. So you may have seen that at London Pride this weekend, Yasmin Benoit, who is a massive ace influencer and representative, spokesperson for the community, was at Pride, and she showed up looking like this, basically, absolutely fire, just looking sick as hell, and a whole bunch of idiots on the internet decided that was cause to just pile on her for no reason. And my problem with that is that these are the same people that will tell us that like ace people aren't discriminated against because you can't be discriminated against for not having sex. But then they'll go on the internet and they'll say that you can't possibly be asexual if you dress like that because you're asking for it. Hey girl, first of all, no outfit is asking for it. Second of all, that's assault. Like, it's such a bizarre response to have, and like it really winds me up because like the clothes we wear are not the person we are. They are often representative of the person we are, but that doesn't make them the person we are. And being ace and a woman of big titties myself, I like to get the girls out. I love it, in fact. Just because I'm asexual does not mean I don't enjoy titties, especially my own. I look great in low-cut tops. I look fantastic in low-cut tops. Why should I deprive the world of seeing that just because I am asexual? That doesn't mean I want everybody in a vicinity to sleep with me. It means I like the way I look, and I don't mind if other people see it. That is all those outfits mean. That is all the clothes that you wear means, is that you have decided you like that way that you look, and you are willing to project that out. It has nothing to do with your sex life. Why people think in the year of our Lord 2023 that the clothes you wear have anything to do with your sex life is beyond me. This weird thing happens where ace folks have sexual fantasies projected onto them. And then when you say, oh, but that person's asexual, people get upset because they're like, but they're so sexy. And it's like, yeah, the sexiness isn't for you. It's not for anything. It just is. Something is allowed to just be sexy without there having to be an action that comes with that. It can just exist as something sexy. That's fine. That's allowed. I think what gets me about it as well is that we as a society love dichotomies. We love the goth who's terrifying on the outside but is a sweet bubbly angel on the inside. We love the characters that are grumpy but secretly have a heart of gold. We love characters that contain multitudes because humans contain multitudes. You can dress sexy and not want to be sexualized. And even then, sexualization isn't inherently a creepy, gross, misogynistic thing, right? It's a fairly natural thing. It's just been bastardized through media and patriarchy. Women can sexualize men can sexualize women and each other and NBs, etc., etc. The problem comes when the sexualization becomes external rather than internal. You can't help what your mind is doing. The thought police aren't real. You can absolutely sexualize someone in your own head. It only becomes a problem When you then make that sexualization of that person their problem. Projecting your own desires onto another person and then being angry when they reject those fantasies is the most insecure, aggravating incel behavior, and it's something that every single ace person has come up against at least once. I don't see myself as a particularly sexual being. I was never the person anybody wanted to date, and in order to look hot, I have to put a lot of time and effort in. But it has happened occasionally. And as I said in my TikTok, I like getting the girls out. It's fun. Boobs are fun. And they look great in my clothes. I dressed as Jessica Rabbit in high school. I'd do it again now. I dressed as Poison Ivy one year at uni and Black Canary the year after. Sexy cosplay is fun to me, and I love the way I look while I'm doing it. Does that in any way invalidate my identity as an asexual person? Pull the other one. I vividly remember that night out clubbing as Poison Ivy. It was one of the first times I'd ever dressed deliberately provocative, and I had put a lot of effort into it, and I was a bit anxious about it, but I was having fun. And a guy in my course who I barely knew, but was friends with some of my friends, leaned in really close on the dance floor and said, "You look so hot." And I was like, "Oh, thank you," and then kept dancing. And 30 seconds later, he leaned back in and was like, "I said, you look so hot." And I thanked him again. And he looked confused. And I was confused. Later, I would realize this was because he was trying to hit on me and not just innocently compliment me like I thought he was doing. His compliment came with an expectation. He thought if he expressed his interest, I would react in kind. And he wasn't a massive dick about it when I didn't reciprocate, although it was awkward, and looking back, it's another very clear indication that I was ace, because girl, he was being so blatant. How did you not notice that? But even he, a relatively good guy, didn't know how to react when his appreciation for my sexiness wasn't responded to by directing said sexiness at him. Because if it wasn't for attracting men, what on earth could it have been for? It's a mystery. This is the same argument that's lobbied at lesbians too, by the way. It's just even more blatant when it comes to asexual people. Ace people and lesbians aren't dressing up for the male gaze. Hell, I'm bi, and I have literally never dressed for the male gaze in my life, even before I knew I was ace. When I dress sexy, I don't want men to catcall me. I want women and gay men and queer folks to go, "Oh my god, that outfit! Those titties! That ass! Look at you go!" At most, I would like a straight man to offer a polite
work. Yes, there we go. An ally. Work.
Or an actual genuine compliment would be nice, but I don't hold out hope. Because when I make an effort to be sexy, it can't just be for me or for platonic validation. It has to be for the pleasure of men. It has to be for attracting a mate. It has to be asking for it. Which brings me right back to Barbie and the politics of being sexy. Barbie is asexual in the Barbie movie because she doesn't have reproductive organs and she doesn't need to be interested in sex or even romance, but she's played by Margot Robbie. So men want her to be a sex symbol. The same way Birds of Prey got backlash for making Harley Quinn's outfit less skimpy than in Suicide Squad, as if anything about that outfit was practical or even actually sexy, or the outfits in Birds of Prey were somehow less hot. Are you kidding? She was so hot in Birds of Prey. And the better Suicide Squad movie. But these kinds of men don't care about what women find hot or what women are most comfortable wearing, as long as they have something to ogle. Barbie is no different. These men want to project their fantasies onto her because woman hot, therefore woman must be for me. Do you think that only women you don't personally find attractive are allowed to be lesbians or ace? Would it be different if she was overweight or didn't have a perfectly symmetrical face? I, as a curvy woman with a below average face, am a lot less sexualized than someone like Margot Robbie. Even if I wore an outfit she's worn, people wouldn't react the same because I'm not conventionally thin and pretty. I'm not stereotypical Barbie. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing as an ace person because I've swerved a lot of things. But in some ways, it can be really bad for my self-esteem. Especially when so much of the world's status is based on looks over anything else. The hotter somebody is, the more we're willing to do for them, to venerate them for a simple accident of genetics. Being sexy is a political bargaining chip, and one that women have only managed to take back control of in the last 40 or so years, but we still don't own it completely. We're gaining ground, but men are still dictating the parameters of sexiness, the exact weight and age at which women become undesirable, to the point where a movie about a kid's toy is infuriating to them, because it holds a mirror up to the patriarchy and doesn't make the hot lady exploit her sexuality enough. But Barbie isn't for them. She's a doll for little girls and little boys and sometimes adult women and NBs and anybody out there who wants to play with her, because as the film points out, Barbie is an idea. She's not a girlfriend, she's not a sex doll, she's not even a sex symbol, or at least she was never supposed to be. Anything sexual about Barbie is, and always has been, about the people projecting that onto her, not anything to do with her character. Barbie was created to be a career woman with her own house, in an age where women couldn't even get a mortgage yet. She was created by a mother for her daughter because girls' toys were all baby dolls to teach them how to rear children, and Ruth wanted to give her daughter something else to aspire to. But that's the plight of existing as a woman, or a woman-adjacent or presenting person, in a world where women's value is measured in large part by their looks and attitude before ever getting to their qualifications. The movie says it itself. You have to be thin, but not too thin, and you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy. But also you have to be thin. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. Obviously, that's an abridged version of it, but still. Existing is easier while sexy. But if you're too sexy, you don't belong to yourself anymore. You're owned by people's perceptions of you, by the male gaze, by an image that doesn't capture the whole of you, but just one facet. And then the world decides that facet must be the whole, and it's not fair. Barbie can be sexy to you. That's allowed. But that doesn't make her not asexual. It doesn't make Jessica Rabbit not asexual. It doesn't make Marilyn Monroe not asexual. It doesn't make Yasmin Benoit not asexual. And it doesn't make me not asexual. Just because I've decided to dress a certain way does not ever, ever, ever mean I am asking for it. And anybody who uses that language around me is dead to me. Because that is perpetuating culture, whether you believe it is or not. And there are people out there who will claim that ace people aren't discriminated against. And then you look at the backlash that Yasmin got for wearing a nice outfit to Pride, for dressing skimpy while being asexual, and the amount of backlash and comments and threats she got to her safety, people threatening to do horrible things to her to make her turn normal. You just haven't had the right guy. You just haven't met the right person. You just haven't taken the right dick. And it's not acceptable. We need to start changing the language we use to talk about sexuality and sex with people. We need to start changing the way we look at people, as if being sexy precludes people from being asexual. That's insane. People are allowed to present however they like. I'm sure that everybody knows one or two men in their life who are very campy on the surface but are ostensibly straight. Or queer men who are real butch seeming and like manly men but are gay as they come. Or women who present as butch lesbians who are actually just like straight ladies who like the butch aesthetic. Like, the aesthetic that you ascribe to can in many ways be representative of your identity. It absolutely can. But it isn't your whole identity. You do not know every single thing about a person from the way they present themselves in public. You do not know every single thing about a person from the top they wear or whether or not they're wearing fishnet tights. So yeah, Barbie is asexual. And so am I. And we're allowed to be sexy. But we're not required to be. And when we decide to do that, that's our choice. I'm off to go and watch Oppenheimer while twerking in a sexy Barbie outfit. And young?
Why don't you do right like some other man? I wanna be loved by you. The deedly 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 dum. Boo boo be